How is everybody doing today? Can you hear me? Where is
Yes.
amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm just going to give me one second. I'm just going to share my screen and kind of give us a couple more minutes to allow some more people to find the webinar. But I hope everyone's staying safe, and thank you again for joining me today. Okay. So let's see, 9 people have entered the room. Amid all, okay, so we've got a good amount of people. So thank you everyone for joining me here today. My name is Jermaine. I'm part of JupiterHR, which is my company dedicated to helping people achieve and get their dream jobs. And so far in 2020, I've managed out 48 people, and I'm looking to get that number to 100 before the end of the year. This is the second in a monthly series of webinars that I'll be doing straight throughout the rest of the year. So let's jump right into it. So if you have any questions, feel free to if you have any questions, feel free to there we go. Feel free to save them towards the end. There will be a portion where you'll be able to ask questions, and I also do have an FAQ that we're going to be running. So let's kick her off. So here's what we're going to be seeing today. We're going to be talking about who this type of webinar is going to be suited for, what you should be getting out of it, and any special offers that I have. We'll be looking at constructing through the logic behind interviews, the type of interviews that there are, as well as like the most consistent, frequently asked questions. We'll go into what I call our secret weapon, the 5 stories. And then finally, we'll conclude on what happens when you don't have the ability to actually answer a question. So who you are and why this webinar will be helpful for you. You're somebody that who's currently job hunting, or you're someone that's having trouble getting past the first or second stages of interviews, and you want some clarity to understand why or what you could be doing better. If you're also interested in learning at the logic and the thought process behind employers and what they're looking for in interviews, this webinar is going to help you. If you're looking to make a change and you want to explore some new options, this will help you articulate that transition. So my promise to you on what this webinar will help you achieve. This webinar will help you understand how to plan for any type of interview. It'll teach you how to leave a considerable impression on those who speak with you, which is important when they're doing the reviews and they're trying to advocate why one person may be a better fit for the organization over another. This is going to also help you understand the perspective of the interviewer, and will allow you to really answer questions in a way that makes everybody happy, the person asking it and the person giving it. This will also give you the confidence to enter any interview and leave completely satisfied. I think one of the worst things that could happen at any point in your life is feeling like you didn't leave it all on the table, that maybe if you gave it a little bit of extra effort or prepared for it better, you might have had a shot. And we're trying to negate that. We want it to be where, you know what, I left it all on the table. I gave them everything. I prepared properly. I knew my stuff. And if they don't go with me, that's not on me, that's on them. And we want to make sure that you have that confidence leaving the interview. So before we get right into it, anyone that is viewing this webinar live or is going to be viewing the video, there is a special offer for those at the link for my Calendly. It's 50% off on one-on-one interview sessions. That could mean we do mock interviews, or if you'd like to dissect an interview as to why you weren't successful in it and wanted some options and understanding of what you could have done better. This is what these kinds of sessions are for, and it's only available at 50% off for the people in this webinar, and which expires May 5th. So let's jump into it. Before we get to the actual meat and potatoes of the interview, there are some best practices that you should always pursue and always do prior to the interview. The first one is research the company. Now, when we're interviewing, one of the things that we want to look out for is for people that are passionate about either the company that we represent or the product that we make. And the reason being is, especially within technology, but jobs on a whole, someone that is passionate about everything that's going on in the company is somebody that is more likely to go above and beyond. From the hiring managers or the employer's perspective, this is somebody that's going to get you a great return on investment. So how do you, the person interviewing, convey that you are this type of person? And the first way to do it is just by knowing your stuff. Researching the company, getting to see what's been going on with them in local news, maybe something noteworthy has happened before in the past. I mean, how embarrassing would it be if you went to a company, they asked you, what do you know about us? And you couldn't answer anything. And then they respond by telling you, we actually just filed for our IPO yesterday. That's pretty big news. You suddenly look like a waste of time. Really and truly, you look like somebody that's not worth the effort because you couldn't research the company. So you always want to know what's been going on of the company in terms of the news cycle, projects, or announcements that they've made. The best way to do that is by checking out their social media: Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. That's where they'll put all the stuff that they want you to see. And if you want to go a step further and try to see some of the stuff that they don't want you to see, check out their employee reviews or their their employee reviews, or even how they're trending on the news or on Google itself. If you actually go to Google and you type in the company in quotations and you hit the news button, you get all the articles that exactly match that company spelling. You also want to research the product, and this kind of ties back into the company. You want to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the product from the consumer side. What are people saying about it? What are the strong points? What are the weaknesses? Is it user friendly? Is it not? Do people like it? Why do people buy it? And what does their competition look like? If you're able to even go a step further and talk about the industry or the domain at large, it's even more impressive. You come off as a subject matter expert. And again, it helps build that confidence and credibility in you as a candidate. And the last bit is you should research the person. What does this exactly mean? Researching the person is basically getting an idea of what their career progression has been like. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for seeing what somebody has done prior to the position that they were in. And it gives you a chance to see if there's any common ground you can identify with. Maybe you see that you both worked at the same company before or a similar. An example, at my current position, one of the reasons they called me in for an interview is because they saw I had enterprise rental car as one of my past jobs. And the person making the decision about whether or not to bring me in for an interview worked at Penske, which was an enterprise competitor. That knowledge alone solidified his decision to kind of bring me in, because he's like, well, I know that since Enterprise is a Penske competitor, they have some really good training and they have some really good people. And that was it. And so going in, if you're able to identify a thread where you have common ground, it makes the conversation with the interviewer that much more of a conversation and less of an interview. And those are the interviews that you want to have. The ones where it's easy to go, it's easy to talk to, and before you know it, an hour has flown by, and it's like it was just 5 minutes in your perception. So the different types of interviews and what you should suspect and how to prepare for them. The first interview would be the phone interview. It's the first level of screening, usually done by recruiters and sometimes by hiring managers. As a recruiter, I do phone screens for people who have resumes that interest me, that pique my interest. Sometimes it might be a cover letter that does the job, but a phone interview is a safe way for me to conduct the interview with no hassle and no trouble. Something that you should be aware of is that hiring managers and recruiters are absolutely terrified of bringing people into the environment without getting a good idea of what they're like, because people are crazy. You never know if you might bring somebody that is going to cause a scene, is going to scream, or is just a general weirdo. So the phone interviews is a buffer to kind of get a good sense of that. Now, as a candidate, what you need to make sure when it comes to phone interviews is that you're projecting well. It's that you are giving confidence into what you are saying. You don't have visual, physical cues to let somebody know whether or not you're passionate about something or excited. So you have to project it within your voice. Sometimes that might mean you are positioned with your diaphragm and your chest out, and you're speaking, from your chest, from your lungs, or that means you speak at a bit of higher volume, or that you force yourself to smile on the phone because that comes across. You want to know that you're energetic, but we also want to know that you're enthusiastic about the position. And for those of you that suffer with having a monotone voice, this is a challenge and something that you should work on, because if you come across bored on the phone, I'm not going to bring you in for a conversation to bore me in person. I don't need you to see me yawn. In-person interviews, these are usually your second or third round of interviews. This is done by the recruiters, the hiring managers, HR, or some combination of the three. Usually these are focused on yes, your cultural fit, but also your technical skills and your technical abilities. So when it comes to second and third round interviews, expect that there's going to be some type of verification of your technical skill set. Whether that's scenario-based questions, if you're a developer, for instance, a technical test that includes coding, just something that will get you to demonstrate how well you can not only think on your feet, but how well you can actually perform the tasks that you've listed on your resume. And then finally, there is the leadership interview. This is more of a formality than anything else. A lot of times the leadership, the senior leadership, is actually removed from the hiring process. But because they are the ones that signed the check, they want to make sure that they're the last line of defense against bad hires. And a lot of them, you'd be surprised at how many leaders actually operate based off of their gut or their instinct. So in that meeting, they might ask you some questions that seem rudimentary, or in some cases, they seem like they're repeating themselves from the last interview. But all that is that they're trying to see how you answer. A lot of senior executives are trained on how to identify somebody telling a lie and what kind of social cues or tells are available. And they'll be looking out for that. Anything that makes you seem less credible than you are is what they're looking for, and they're looking for a reason to axe you. But they're also looking for reasons and the logic behind why their middle management has recommended you for the job. So PAR is something that I use frequently when it comes to writing resumes. It's also applicable when it comes to interviews. PAR is an acronym that we use in the resume world to kind of justify and to kind of explain what your overall impact in an environment was. The P stands for problem, the A stands for action, and the R stands for results. Now, in terms of problems, when you're speaking about your experience and when you're telling a story, which we'll touch on later, you want to identify what the actual challenge was that you faced, whether it was a one-off or whether it was a consistent thing. You want to identify with the interviewer, or you want the interviewer to be able to identify, what was at stake if this problem wasn't addressed. Is that a loss of revenue, a loss of customers? Maybe it's a loss of reputation, or it might cause catastrophic failure in your product. Action refers to the technical skills that you took to employ and create a solution to address the problem at hand. And also, did it fix it, and how it was going to go about fixing. And then the end results refers to what happened in the end. How did things change? Was the project saved? Was it a failure? How did this change things going forward for you? And it's always good to keep PAR in mind when you're going through an interview, because you want the interviewer to know just flat out what it is that you've done, and that you're aware of A, what the successful outcome looks like, B, why the elements that went into play to make sure that outcome was successful, and C, that you can replicate it again because you know your stuff. So why do companies conduct interviews? Well, from a hiring and a recruiter standpoint, interviews are a great way for us to whittle down the large amount of applicants that we get. On a good job application, I might see 100 applicants or 100 resumes for that one job, and I cannot screen each and every one of them at once. So I do, or we cannot hire each and every one of them at once. So we do different stages of interviews to filter through and find the people that we really want to work with, that we can invest having detailed conversations with, so that it confirms our suspicions. Um, it's also easier to judge whether or not somebody is bullshitting on their application. Interviews and hiring on a whole is an extremely subjective thing. You want to make sure that this person that is interviewing you has nothing bad to say about you. That's why we don't drag our former employers during interviews. That's why we don't speak ill of anybody. That's why we make sure that what we put on our resume is the truth and the stuff that we can back up, whether with stories of our examples of our track record, or if someone puts us in a scenario-based environment and they ask us a hypothetical question, we can use our experience to properly answer what we would do in that situation. It also gives us an idea of what our competitors are doing. Chances are, if you are applying for a job at my organization, that you're also applying for the same type of position with other people that I share the space with. Whether or not they're direct competitors is irrelevant, but it gives me an idea of what's going on in the market and what people are looking for. And in some cases, if I have to change my hiring strategies, in the summer of 2018, the banks inflated every single technology professional's salary, because they had these huge projects with these huge demand. And as a result, they were picking up developers left, right, and center and just gave them crazy salaries. That made the market really, really tight, and it made things super expensive. So conducting these interviews gave us an idea as to why we were seeing salary requests much higher than we expected, and that we have to take that feedback to our management to get an approval and an increase in the salary band to remain competitive. Interviews also give us the chance to make a really informed decision before we make a financial commitment. Believe it or not, companies do not want to fire you. You know, even if things are toxic, if things are going bad, a company, especially a small organization, will want to believe that it's salvageable, that they can get the return on investment. It's kind of like a toxic relationship. In a way, when you look at it from the outside, you realize, man, I shouldn't have been in that for as long as I was. But when you're in it, you know, sometimes just being around a familiar setting or a familiar person is enough for you to say, maybe I can work this out. And for companies, it's extremely expensive to hire people, extremely expensive to recruit them, extremely expensive to interview them. I'm talking time, resources, and just money to post these jobs. It's not easy. So we want to make sure that when we make that financial commitment to somebody, that the costs are all factored in and that it's just a one decision that we make. I'm sure you've heard the term before, measure 6 times, cut once. It's the same thing for companies and interviews. So why should you do interviews? It's the best way for you to assess what your actual value is on the open market. There are other tools available. Like for instance, I'm sure some of you have known, I've made a salary guide that kind of gives you an idea of what the market look like in terms of technology professionals. If you're a tech pro, feel free to download it at my website. It's totally free. You doing an interview is also a great way to see what gaps are in your profile and what employers are going to be looking at as potential weaknesses. This is knowledge that is great for you because you're able to say, let me go back and see if I can invest in developing these skills and make myself a better candidate, or maybe I need to pivot in a different direction on how I'm branding myself and the opportunities that I'm pursuing. This is also a fantastic opportunity to network with both employers and other candidates. I tell this story all the time. I got my first job recruiting because somebody liked me in an interview, but the senior manager, the leadership, wouldn't sign off on it. This person liked me enough where he was like, you know what? I have a friend that works at a competitor. Let me go refer you to them. And that's how I was able to get my first recruiting job. It's the same thing where, you know, if you make a strong impression on somebody, an interview, or somebody else that you're also competing with for an interview, it's a great way to build build a relationship and a reputation. Just because you're competing with somebody doesn't mean you can't be friends, doesn't mean you can't be friendly, doesn't mean you can't work to your advantage. And interviews are a great way for you to network with people in your space. It also gives you an idea of what their competitors are doing. So if you go to two competitors, you can use the knowledge that they're competitors against each other. For instance, you know, you want to offer me this position without any work from home options, but your competitor has work from home options for everybody, and you can kind of play them against each other. This also plays into our last point. Doing interviews and getting actual offers is a great way for you to attain leverage in salary negotiations. You saying to somebody, give me 10K more because I want it, is less compelling than you saying, give me 10K more because I got 3 other companies that are about to give me 10K more and I have it in writing. And I want to work with you, but money is money and I'll go where the money is. You don't have to, you don't have to, you don't have to exceed it. You just have to match it. And again, that's a conversation that you have complete leverage in. So there are 3 different types of interview questions that you need to be made aware of. And if you think about it, every single question in an interview that you've ever experienced has fallen into one of these 3 categories. The categories are cultural fit, technical ability, and profitability. Now, the reason why you want to know which categories an interview question falls into is because it'll give you an idea on A, what they're asking for, and B, how to properly answer it. So cultural fit questions are questions that are based more around your soft skills and your communication skills. They want to see that if you come into the environment, that you're A, not going to mess up morale, and B, that you're just not an asshole to work with. I'll be completely frank. None of us likes working with people that we would classify as assholes. They make us miserable. They make work a horrible place. And as hiring managers, believe me, they hear complaints. If there is an asshole in the building, at least 6 people have complained about that person, and it just makes everybody miserable. On the flip side, that could have negative effects on your morale and your company culture, which makes it hard for you to retain talent. And as I mentioned before, talent and hiring people is an extremely pricey and expensive process. So cultural fit questions are to assess whether or not somebody is a good fit. It's not also just personality as well. It's also like intangibles and characteristics. Are you a hard worker? Like everybody here is somebody that will stay till after hours to complete a project, and you're somebody that wants to leave early. You're not the best fit. On the flip side, there are organizations where everybody wants to leave early, and this one late guy is setting like is making everybody feel guilty for it. Before we move on, just a funny story I'd actually like to share with you. I had a company once that hired a senior Russian developer to work on their application, and he quit within 24 hours. I found this interesting, so I asked, why did he quit? And the person said to me that that person had about 20 years seniority on everybody on the team. So he's just an older gentleman. They were all monkeying around and playing, and one of their developers decided to go on Spotify and loop Tyga's Taste for the entire day, just over and over again. For those of you that don't know, Tyga's Taste is a song with a very infectious hook, and it goes like, doo, 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 doo. I'm not going to get into it, but it's very infectious. And they played this throughout the whole entire day, and it drove the Russian dude crazy. He quit on the spot. He was like, I can't do this. I'm out. And he left. And that's an example of cultural fit clashing. So was he able to do the job? Most definitely. They hired him because he's great from a technical perspective, but they drove him crazy. And I imagine if he stayed on longer, it would have really killed their morale. The next question is technical ability. Technical ability refers to, are you able to do the job that you say that you're able to do? Are you able, what do you need onboarding on? What do you need, what do you need to be onboarded on? What do you need in terms of skills, in terms of gaps? What can you do on the spot? You know, are you able to do this job? If you're someone in sales, are you able to deliver on converting a sales? Are you able to do a cold call? So when somebody asks you a question on, again, how you would perform in the environment, it's usually technical ability. Profitability comes into how you directly impact the company's bottom line. Um, there are usually two functions in an organization an employee serves. Either employee is helping them make money, or helping them spend money, or helping them save money. I guess that would be three functions, but one way or the other, you affect the profitability of your company. And being able to identify how will enable you to really make a very strong pitch and a very compelling value proposition to whoever is interviewing you, especially with regards to leadership. You know, if you're talking to a CEO or a CFO, for instance, they have to be always fiscally aware of how the company is operating. And if you are someone that can either help them improve revenue or help them save money, you're a hero, without a doubt. Um, so this slide deals with some of the frequently asked questions in interviews, and kind of the logic and understanding of what these people are actually asking. We'll even go a step further, and we'll identify which of the previous three categories these kind of questions fall under. So tell me about yourself. This is a question that is all cultural fit. Here, they want to know about your passions. They want to know about a little bit about your career history, but more or less, they want to see what really drives you. You know, what are you about? What do you say? What do you enjoy to do? And overall, how do you fit in our environment? You know, we are people that love to tell jokes. Are you someone that can take a joke? Um, we are people that are very serious, stoic, and we're just all about coming in and doing the work. Are you somebody that can get with the program, or are you somebody that disrupts it? What are your biggest weaknesses? Um, this is a mix of being a cultural test, a cultural question, but more it's a technical one. Like, where are your gaps right now? What can't you do? What do you need us to pick up the slack on? Now, for you as a candidate, the best way for you to answer this question is to talk about the skills that you're currently developing. And it's all about how you pitch it. So instead of saying, oh, I can't work with the Python programming language right now. Instead of saying that, you can say, you know what, I'm currently pursuing a certification in Python, which will enable me, once completion, to work with machine learning algorithms. You know, that's a much more compelling answer than I don't know how to use it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a profitability question. As I've mentioned before and throughout this whole entire process, hiring is expensive. We get charged for having the recruiter seat on LinkedIn. We get charged for putting job postings up on Indeed and LinkedIn and Glassdoor. In some instances, we have to pay for your accommodations when you come see us. It is a very expensive procedure, and it sucks to have to do it again after a short time because somebody went somewhere else. So the company wants to know whether or not you are factoring them into your long-term future plans. If they can get anywhere from a year to 2 years out of you, it's a successful hire. They can be happy with it, with that transition. If they can get you for more than 5 years, that's amazing. They want to build with you long-term. So how you answer it is by saying, you know, I see myself in this type of position, and I feel like I can grow with this company. That adds a lot of confidence, but also comfort to them as well, saying, okay, this isn't someone that's looking to fly at the first sight. Why should we hire you? This is a mix of all three, and this is on you to decide where you want to emphasize where your strongest skill set is. You know, you're trying to let them know that, this is what sets you apart from everybody else applying for the role. And it should be something that you excel at, that you feel like you can go toe to toe with anybody at. but you also want to talk about how you would be a great fit in their environment, and how, from a passionate standpoint, either the company itself, its mission, or its product speaks to you on a deeper level than just a paycheck. So the value of storytelling when interviewing, the best way for, and this is scientifically proven, the best way for human beings, for the human brain to be able to absorb information is through the means of a story. A story attacks the emotional receptors of the brain, enabling somebody to have empathy and a deeper understanding of the nuances of the story. A story helps them digest data and numbers much easier because of the context of empathy. And a story is literally just much more entertaining than if you were to just do a dry run of point A to B. Give me the ups, give me the downs. And that is how you not only keep yourself engaged, but the interviewer engaged as well. Remember, these are people. A boring interview is a boring conversation, and a boring conversation is not a memorable one. So the basis of your story should be an emphasis on your overlapping skills and your professional narrative. Now, a professional narrative is basically the logic behind each of your career decisions. Whether or not they're relevant in terms of industry, there should be some sort of theme that connects all the experiences together. I'll give you an example. I started out, when I graduated school, I started out in radio. And after my show was canceled on air, I went into sales. I sold gym memberships. Then I sold car rental services. And then I sold construction equipment. All of this prior to getting into recruiting. And I also had jobs as a videographer, as a chef, and as a caterer. It was just all over the place. So when I went for a recruiting role, they asked me, what of your profile suggests that you can do the job of recruiting? And my professional narrative was that I'm a strong communicator. I'm somebody that's always been in the seat of an interview, whether that's trying to get somebody to give me information in order to get a quote to drive conversations, or information in order to guide them towards a sales purchase. Conversation has been the forefront of my professional narrative. And I would be a great recruiter because I'm a strong communicator. I can understand people from various different backgrounds and different levels of communication. But I also have strong interviewing skills, and I can guide somebody between accepting an offer from one company or another. And suddenly I'm able to link and create a story and a narrative around my randomized experience. Suddenly the logic is there. So to make your own professional narrative, identify the overlapping skills that you've carried from job to job. These are usually skills that you're strongest at, skills that make the job easier for you to do. And ask yourself the following: what are my 3 strongest skills? What do I love doing? And what jobs utilize these skills the most? And when you go into your interview, these jobs could be, again, a job that's in the future that you see yourself growing within a company, or it can better tell you about the different industries you should be pursuing. So this is how you should structure your story, and it's just like the movie industry. The movie industry has perfected pretty much boiling down movies into a cookie cutter structure. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. I'm sure everyone has heard of the terms, but it's kind of the same for your own professional story. Act 1 is you establishing the setting, what your office was like, what your work environment was like, your responsibilities. And then you're introducing a problem that's either disrupting your day-to-day or is part of the organization's overall mission. Act 2 of your story is you establishing how you met this challenge head on, right? Or problem face first. What kind of solutions you involved. You can talk about, again, if you went through trial and error to identify the right solution, identifying that, what worked, what didn't, and then finally highlighting how you put the pieces together to create a solution and how that solution addressed the problem. And then Act 3 is the end result. Talk about how you overcame the challenge and what changed the result. Are customers happier? Is the process to do this type of work easier? Did you find out a new way for the product to be more effective with its mission? And if you notice, this follows the PAR acronym from earlier. Act 1 is the problem, Act 2 is your actions, and Act 3, the end results. So keeping that in mind enables you to properly craft stories and responses that address the question that your interviewer was asking, but also let them know that you're capable of not only executing, but also doing it well. And then the end result being like clear cut, by me overcoming this challenge and me fixing this problem for you, this is what happens. I like to say, this is how I make your life easier. This is how things are going to be changed, and things are going to change for the better. So I have a secret weapon that I like to call the 5 stories. And these stories are basically stories you have in your back pocket for when an interviewer asks you a question that you might not be able to answer right off the top of your head. You pulling out one of these stories, especially when you identify what type of question the interviewer is asking for, whether it's profitability, technical ability, or cultural fit, one of these 5 stories addresses either 1 or 2 of those at the same time. And the 5 stories should always be geared and centered in reality and in truth. You should always be sincere about it. The first story should be your greatest success story. This should be a personal achievement. This is something that's going to pretty much highlight the cultural fit aspect. You know, maybe it was climbing a mountain or running a marathon, something that you're extremely proud of, that you put work in. The next question is a time that you failed and became better within the context of your job. This is a technical ability question and a profitability as well. From a technical standpoint, are you able to learn from failure and challenge, or do you just stay the same? Are you able to grow and be better? From a profitability standpoint, you growing and being better means that as an employer, I'm getting a higher return on my investment. I'm much happier to give you a raise by $10,000 if you are bringing 10x that into my company. You know, if your work produces $100,000 worth of revenue for my company, and the next year you ask me for a $10,000 raise on your annual salary, this question and being able to see like, this is someone that continually improves, says to me that I'm always going to get more money back than what I put in. A time that you help develop a junior coworker. Ideally, this is something that you would want in the professional setting. If you don't have this experience, you can also pull from your personal setting. But what we're trying to answer here is cultural fit and, again, technical ability. How strong are you with transferring knowledge from one person to another? You know, how strong are you with helping somebody identify their gaps and addressing those gaps? You know, are you somebody that has patience? This type of question and this type of story gives us all of that. I mean, if you're somebody that can help a junior coworker along, or somebody that just isn't as technically savvy as you, it means that you work well with others, you're a strong communicator, and you're not an asshole. And believe it or not, that is a big thing, not being an asshole. That is the big thing in having a successful interview, is conveying that you're a pleasure to work with. The next story is showing a relevant passion. And a relevant passion means that this could be a story of how, this was all a personal endeavor for you. It could be a story about how the company's product kind of intersects with your personal life, or maybe the company's mission. You know, I have a strong passion for helping Black people find jobs, or I have a strong passion for helping Black businesses. If I were to go work for, say, apply for, poor example, but if I were to go apply for a job at BET, for instance, I'd be more than happy to kind of share a story about my passion for helping Black people and aligning it with their, with what used to be their core mission of furthering the Black cause, right? And just showing that relevant passion that we intersect in that area gives them the confidence that I'm somebody that's just here. It's here for more than just a paycheck. So that's, again, cultural fit, but that's profitability as well. And then finally, a time you had a major impact at work. That could be, again, you went above and beyond in terms of reassessing something, or, maybe you introduced a new idea, a new concept that made the company reevaluate and pivot. It could be something as small as you put together a mental health group, because you realize that your coworkers were struggling with mental health and they need an outlet to kind of express that. That's another cultural and profitability thing, because culturally speaking, you are helping your fellow employees, which goes to helping the culture, which means that I don't have to do the expensive, I got to search for somebody all over again. From a profitability standpoint, you being able to introduce this new perspective to the leadership enables me to save or make more money. And as a company in a capitalist country, I'm all about making or saving more money, which makes you more valuable to me. So what happens if I can't answer a question? What happens if I am going through, I went through all of my success stories. I've identified, what questions are asking me and I'm struggling to answer it. What do I do? What happened? And I'll be blunt with you. You just be completely honest. I have actually been impressed when I asked somebody a question and they legit just looked at me and went, I don't know. I just Googled it. That is the realest thing, honestly, because if we're being real, when you don't know something, everybody Googles it, right? So you trying to bullshit your way through an answer, it embarrasses you. I get secondhand embarrassment from it, and a lot of other interviewers do as well. So you're better off just being blunt, like, hey, I can't necessarily answer that question right now, but here's what I would do to either A, get the answer for you, either whether that's asking somebody, Googling it, doing the research. Just because I can't answer it on the spot doesn't mean I can't get the answer and do the work. So open floor, and feel free to unmute yourselves or just type it into the chat. But what was the last question you had difficulty answering in an interview? And let's see if we can get answers for you. I'll just give everybody some time. Actually, a question that I actually asked an interviewer that always has a positive effect. And this is a good cultural fit question for you to ask as well. Just straight up ask somebody, if you had to describe the color blue to Stevie Wonder, what would you say? And it's always a great question to ask. I don't know if anybody's speaking. I can't hear anybody. But it's always a great question to ask.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was just testing to see if you could hear me. Okay, I listen to what you have to say, so I would want you to finish the Stevie Wonder question. But I would say one of the most challenging questions that tend to be asked, because it requires introspection, is tell me one of your weaknesses or your greatest weaknesses. I tend to find that many probably coaches would say you try to turn your weakness into a strength, but sometimes people want to straight up know, what do you think you are weak in and probably could grow in and would really need to put some effort into doing. So I think that's one of the questions I would like answered. Thanks.
I think, and that's a great question. It is a challenging question. The way that you would answer that, and I touched upon it kind of in the slide, is that you would kind of answer it head on, but not position it as like, it's not something that you're stuck on. It's something that you're actively addressing and you're developing. So, if you're going for a sales role and they ask you what your biggest weakness was, and you said it was cold calling, which is a big thing for sales. Now you saying like, oh, cold calling is my biggest weakness and just leaving it there wouldn't be ideal. But you saying like, first and foremost, you should always flip the question and say it as, well, my biggest area of opportunity is with my cold calling, because, and you can go into either A, I'm not getting as effective as a response as I would like, or B, you know, I'm actually currently developing this skill and I've been going through either the certification course or I've been doing this individual practicing, but each day I get a bit better at it, and each day I get a bit better at it, and I work at it every chance that I get. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Amazing, amazing. Next question is, a time you had to face uncertainty or ambiguity, and did you deal with it? This is a question that I ask quite a bit working in the startup space. We deal with a lot of ambiguity. A lot of times we're aware of what our end goal is, but we don't know how we're going to get there. You would basically answer it by saying, in the sense that I try to make sure I make note of everything that I do know, where I'm trying to go, and what we have available to us right now. And you can either say I work based on trial and error. I try to identify what the most efficient route would be to get to the goal, and then work it until I hit a wall and pivot when I need to. So you always want to make sure when it comes to ambiguity that you're letting them know that it doesn't scare you. You deal with it by dealing with it head on and working with what you do know, and pivoting when you don't know what to do, or when you when you run out of an idea, and just going to a new one.
Hey, Jermaine, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, I'm Esme from London. I'm really happy to have tuned in. This has been fantastic. My question, or what I have struggled with, was recently I was interviewing with a startup, and they're very new, incredibly limited information on their website. It was more about the product, nothing about the company at all. And the information about the product was very limited. But I had an understanding of who their potential competitors could be. And I used that to kind of develop my understanding about what this company is aiming for in terms of its vision, and what that culture might be like, just based on my awareness of the founder. Now, when I had the interview, the first question they asked me was like, that, what can I do for the company? Like, how can I add value? And honestly, I was a bit unsure, because I was like, well, I have a rough idea of what you might be trying to do. And the reason that I've applied to here is because I'm curious in general. I want to know more about you. But straight away, that was their question. And I do feel like I slightly balled. So I would want to know, in that kind of situation, just saying, I don't know enough about your company, does that come across well? Does that come across like as you haven't done your research, even though there's limited research to have done?
I think that it is a tricky situation, but and this might not work for everybody, but I'm a bit of a joker, to be honest with you. So the way I would strategically approach that question is, I would open up by making a joke that there is literally not this, like, I tried and I digged everywhere to find as much information about you guys as possible, and I couldn't find any. It just so happens that I also have a bit of a background working in marketing, so I can help you guys with your messaging. But strategically, you would also kind of identify a skill set that has nothing to do with the role that you're applying for. Like I said, I'm a recruiter, and if they asked me that question in that guise, I'd make a joke about not being able to find anything about them, and then tell them about my experience as a videographer. Like, I'm really good with a camera. So in addition to the traditional functions as a recruiter, I can also add value by making sick promo videos for the company. Right. And depending on what your disposition is and what the rapport that you built with them is, you can either pivot the conversation to a bit more like jokey joke, where, you're talking about the different videos. Maybe we can make a music video as a promo for the company, where everybody's rapping in silk shirts, and it's just a big joke at that point, but like, you're keeping the conversation going. Or you can actually be really strategic with it and be like, these are some additional skills that I have that aren't actually on my resume, but they've worked well for me in the past at either generating revenue or helping my last employer reach their goals. And this is how I see it helping you. So that's how I would have navigated that question. I hope that helps you out, Esme.
It does, thank you. I have another question, but I'll let other people speak first and then come back if we have time.
Sure, sure, sure. Let's see. Next question was from Melissa. What helps you to be productive? What do you do when you're not motivated? So this is again, this is another mix of a technical ability question and a cultural fit question. Um, Funny enough, when I used to work in sales, motivation and productivity was a big thing, especially when I was selling gym memberships at Good Life Fitness. The reason why I bring that up is because sales jobs try to keep you emotionally engaged by making you have an emotional anchor of sorts. And this can be applied to many other professions as well, especially this question. You know, what helps you to be productive? What do you do when you're not motivated? You should let them know that you have an emotional anchor that allows you to center yourself, and it's about your goals, right? And this is a good time where you can make the company feel really confident about your long-term viability with them by letting them know that your anchor would be, it could be like an overlapping passion with the company. Like you mentioned, one of the stories is a relevant passion. And this anchor, this question would be the perfect situation for that answer, where you talk about your emotional anchor, what's motivating you, whether like, again, it's a socially driven philosophy you're following, or like it's a pride of the work that you do, or that you really just believe in the company's mission. And you can paint the picture that you believe that the company's mission is bigger than you. And keeping you motivated is pursuing that goal because you feel like it'll be the benefit for the people that you service. And that's a great way to inspire confidence in an interviewer. But if you're speaking to like an actual founder themselves, it's going to make them feel like you get what they're trying to go for, and you're bought into the vision. And that alone is hard to find in people that you're interviewing for. Next question is Ash. Why do you have a gap in your resume? It wasn't hard to answer. I just have been holding out for more money. I have IT director skills, but not IT director salary and title. Joy of going above and beyond as an IT manager, but I can't say that until I think I have the room, until I read the room and can say that. You know what? I was telling somebody the other day, and by the way, Ash, you know your worth, get your coins. I'm all for it. I was actually speaking with somebody the other day about gaps, and I told them that gaps are kind of overrated to a certain point. If you have a gap of a couple of months to a year, it's very easy to explain. You can say something akin to like, I was feeling a bit burnt out and I took a sabbatical. I did some traveling. You know, I spent time with family and I recharged. You can also say like you took time off to develop your skills because you saw a trend that was emerging in the market and you wanted to get ahead of it. Another thing that you could do to address a gap is to go the consultant route, which is to leverage your existing skills and to try and find opportunities where you can give people insight. You know, if you're an IT director, for instance, I'm going to assume that you're more on the infrastructure side for argument's sake. But let's say you were an IT director, you could, quote unquote, open up a consultancy where you're helping companies reinforce their infrastructure, you know, or maybe you're helping companies create infrastructures that's easy for them to translate over to cloud environments. But you want to let them know that despite you having a gap, you still manage to keep your skills sharp, either by pursuing your own projects or by pursuing skill development. Hope that answers your question, Ash. Presley, there are a lot of things to manage in this role. How do you stay organized? Actually, funny enough, give me 1 second. I think I might have a copy of that. Yes, I do. Presley, this is called the Eisenhower Decision Matrix. And you can Google it and find a copy of it. But basically, President Eisenhower kept himself organized by drawing a square and dividing it in quadrants and listing the quadrants as, let's see if you can see it, urgent, not urgent. What does it say? Oh, important, not important. So urgent and important would mean do these tasks today. Not urgent and important means decide on a time to do these tasks. Not important and urgent means you delegate to someone else to do these tasks. not important, and not urgent means that you drop these tasks. So whenever someone asks me, how do I stay organized or how do I prioritize, I always tell them that I use the Eisenhower decision matrix. It allows me to get an idea of what's the priority, what needs to be done now, what I can delegate, and what's just wasting my time. I hope that answers your question. You can find it on Google. Remember the Eisenhower decision matrix. Shanice, how would you handle going to multiple interviews and for different positions with the same company and not getting the offer? Would there be a follow-up question from our point of view? So this is a tricky one because I have to ask, how did you get the interviews with multiple positions with the company? Usually
Hi,
because, oh, yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, sorry. That's me, Shanice.
Oh, hi, Shanice. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Sorry, you were going to add to your question?
Yeah, I was. So it happened a few years ago, but I just wanted to know, in case, that sort of situation comes up again. I was interviewing for one role, and they said, you know what, I went through probably 2 or 3 interviews, and then after the 3rd interview, they came back, and this was over like a 5-week period in August. They said that, okay, well, come in for an interview. I went to 2 or 3 interviews. Then they said, you know what, we don't think you're a good fit for this position. We have another position we would like you to interview for. And then I interviewed for that position. And then, it was over the phone. They already met me in person. And then I never heard from them ever again. So it's just, I don't want to be stuck in that situation where I'm just going on interviews.
Yeah.
And it's promising. And then I'm kind of just left in the dark because some companies don't even get back to me at the end of the day. Yeah.
That's actually a huge problem that is being challenged right now in the hiring prospect. It's a general respect thing, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I can give you some insight on what I think happened, and because it's happened to me before, with a candidate of mine. So generally speaking, what happened in my instance was they really liked my guy that I sent in for the role, but they found that he was just a bit more junior than they would have liked, and that they had somebody that was perfect for the role, but they liked my guy regardless. And like I said, hiring is a costly thing to take up. So what may have happened is, like, you might not have been a good fit, or they might have found somebody that was a better fit for that particular position on that particular team. But you would have also fit in another team or another position. And instead of them having to go through the screening process with somebody all over again, they thought that there would be an opportunity to kind of bypass that for you. Now, what happened on the back end is that somebody dropped the ball, in the sense that for some reason or another, they decided not to proceed with you, and they didn't have the manners to reach out to you and just let you know, like, hey, we decided to go into a different direction. But I would say that's more of a positive indicator on your profile. But I also have the philosophy that once you apply to a job and you interview and you complete an interview, until somebody puts an offer in front of you, it doesn't exist. Right. Okay. I agree with that too. Awesome. I hope that answered the question. It does. Thank you. Amazing. Ash said he's interviewing for a director of IT roles. So is someone else going to say something?
Yes, this is Gail.
Hi, Gail.
I'd like to ask a question about how soon is too soon to follow up. Because then, you want to tread the line between seeming desperate and also being thought of as, persistent and interested.
Yeah. So I follow this little equation / schedule. So after I make the initial point of contact with somebody, let's say Gail, you went for an interview and you sent a follow-up right after the interview saying, thank you for your time. Speaking with you made my desire to work for the company even that much more. And I hope to hear from you soon. If you need anything else, let me know. After you send that initial correspondence, I would wait a week and then send up a follow-up just to see how things are going, if they need anything else from you. After you send that correspondence, I would wait another 2 weeks before following up, and so on and so forth. So after you send the third correspondence, you add another week to that, and you're waiting 3 weeks. After that one, it's 4 weeks. And then after the 4 weeks, if you still haven't heard back, just move on. But that schedule is it gives you like a 2-week buffer each time before you reach out to them. So it comes across as persistence and not desperation or annoyance.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Hi,
yeah.
Jermaine.
Hi.
All right. I asked earlier, but I remember being asked this question. So as we know, there are many candidates vying for the position, and they may be like you or maybe not. Could be a trick question or not. Someone says to you, why is it that I should hire you over other candidates? Tell me what is different about you from other candidates. You know, probably the same qualifications, same technical skills, years of experience. What really do you say? And especially there's a panel and there's one of them, because sometimes you have panels and somebody plays the intimidator role. Mm-hmm. You probably give them the general that's you think on your CV or you know of yourself, but as you say, you're not basing them. So you just say, you know, for example, your qualities in terms of being hardworking, reliable, and stuff like that. And they are persisting, yes, but there may be other candidates like that. What do you really say if somebody's pressuring like that? What do you think is the dividing line? For example, you've seen 3 candidates with probably similar experience, similar qualification. What do you use to differentiate yourself in that regard and not really wanting to lie or give a fab story?
I would, the first thing, so 2 things I would do prior to, first and foremost, I'd ask myself, if I was this person asking me this question, what would I need to hear in order to be impressed? Right. And you want to think from the perspective of the interviewer. The second thing I would say to you is that whatever answer you give doesn't matter as much as how you answer it. This is a question that is designed to shake your confidence and to see if you believe what you've been saying. You know, last time somebody asked me that question, I made a joke and I said, what distinguishes me from everybody else is that I'm the type of dude that'll make your life easier. You know, I'm the type of dude that, you know, if there is a hard job to do, I'm the first to jump and do it. I'm the type of dude that, you know, if we're dealing with a tense situation, I can make the room relax with a bad joke, a bad but appropriate joke. I'm the type of dude that is memorable enough that when I call in sick, everybody in the office realizes I'm not there because they miss me. I'm the type of dude that you would want to work with. And again, the day you just want to convey, like I always say, like the whole lead-in of I'll make your life easier by doing this is a great lead-in, but that's more off a confidence thing. The interview process, the hiring process, the resume process, it's all one big sales transaction, to be completely honest with you. And the goal here is to create an emotional dig or trigger that makes them feel not only confident in your abilities, but that you would be a positive impact on their environment.
All right, thanks for that insight.
Yeah, no worries. So
Esme again.
Sorry?
Esme again.
Esme, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and loving this. My question slightly builds off Shanice's earlier one. I had a situation, that same startup actually, where we got through the interview. It was a very chatty one, and the rest of the interview did seem to go well. And towards the end, she shared with me that due to the whole kind of coronavirus situation, they had reassessed what would really add value to the company right now. And they realized that the role that I had applied for, they need someone who has like a strong financial background in, where I don't. I am beginning to get into technical work. And that was a role where I was really looking for, the product development role where I was really looking forward to being able to really test some of the things that I've learned and developed. And so I kind of shut down in that situation because I was like, well, damn, I'm not that finance person. How can I? But I know I'm someone who learns and I'm ready to apply myself. So in hindsight, I know how I could have, what's the word? navigated that situation. But what I do want to know is that when a company offers you a different role to what you had applied to, and you're honestly not interested in what they're offering, what's a way to look after that relationship and try to create scope to pitch yourself for what they're looking for?
I would be completely honest and transparent. I think a lot of times we as job seekers fall into this, it's not necessarily an inferiority complex, but the power dynamic between interviewee and interviewer. Traditionally, we're under the assumption that the interviewer is the one with the power in the situation, because, you know, they have access to like employment and pretty much getting you paid. When in reality, and I always want to emphasize this, the dynamic is much more even than you expect because of that initial cost when it comes to hiring. So they are aware that them changing gears on you, like if you applied for one role and they're offering you another, they are working under the expectation that you might refuse that. And it would be totally understandable and professional as to why you might not go with that. Now, if you, in your refusal, decide to cuss them off, then no, you're going to burn the bridge. But if it's like, I do, if you go, I do appreciate you, making this gesture. This is a company I definitely want to work with. I just don't feel like my skill sets would be properly utilized in this role. And I'm unfortunately going to have to turn down this opportunity. But I do hope that, we can cross paths and work together in the future. And just saying that, it's just being upfront, just being honest is such a better thing. We have this joke in the recruitment world where we're like, we don't like surprises. If we say like, hey, what is your salary expectations? You tell me your salary expectations, and I get approval for that on the offer, and you're like, yeah, you know what? I want 10,000 more. I'm like, dude, what the hell, man? You stressing me. But if you tell me like, Jermaine, I want A, B, and C, and I come back to you with A, E, and F, and you're like, that's not going to work for me. There's not much I can do because you were upfront with me. In fact, it would make me respect you more. And the next time I see your application, I know that you're not running game. I know that you're not wasting my time. Like if you applied for something, you thought there was a chance. And because I already know you're a known quantity. If I think you're a good fit, I'm bringing you an ASAP because we missed out on you the first time. We can't do it again the second time. So that's how I would go about it. Recruiters always appreciate the honesty, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. But the worst thing you could do is to A, lead them on, or B, renege or rescind on an offer that was extended. That totally burns the bridge.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. This is from Tori. What is a good email subject to catch a recruiter's attention? If you're dealing with an agency recruiter, the ones that work for like the Randstads or the Robert Halfs, a good email subject would honestly be, I'm the type of profile that'll get you paid and hired quickly. Because their goals are towards financial incentive. If it's like talent acquisition, a good email subject could be puns. Anything with puns. Honestly, I had a friend that she was applying to Esty, that mattress company, and her cover letter opened up with "Don't sleep on me." And she got a response, but that kind of creativity would definitely catch someone's attention. Have fun with it, don't be dry, don't be boring. Sorry, Melissa, I don't understand that question. I'm gonna move on to the next one. How would you answer a question where they ask you about your personal challenges? Do you use PAR to answer these questions? You do use PAR. I always want to stress though that being careful with answering personal challenges with these type of questions, you don't want to make anyone feel awkward, and a lot of people can feel awkward if you bring up like some really emotionally charged stuff. I actually lost. I was interviewing for a place in the summer, and we were doing a phone interview, and my dad starts calling me. My dad never calls me. Like My dad never calls me. At that point, we didn't talk for like a good 4 or 5 years. And we just reconnected like 2 months prior to. So he's calling me. I'm like, this is weird, in the middle of an interview. So I send the call to voicemail. And then he sends me a text. Your grandmother just died in the middle of the damn interview. So I'm like in the middle of this conversation and my mouth is just like, and they thought like the screen froze or like, Jermaine, are you okay? And I'm like, wow, I just found out my grandmother died. And they did the whole, oh, are you okay to continue? Yada, yada. I'm like, yeah. And I finished the interview and I thought I finished the interview great. But I'm not going to lie. When I told them what happened, they had this look in their eye. And the look was like, it was sympathy, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sympathy, but in the confines, in the context of an interview, sympathy is bad because sympathy does not elicit confidence. If you turn sympathy into inspiration, then it'll elicit confidence. But if it's just straight sympathy, it won't. And this was for a sales job, which is, all about confidence and ability. So I definitely think that threw me off my rocker, and I wasn't surprised when they didn't extend the offer to me. So you want to be careful with your personal challenges. You want to always make sure that if you're talking about a personal challenge, it's something that you overcame long ago and that you are distinctively better for it. I hope that answers your question, Galaxy A20. I don't know why your name's not popping up. Same. Oh, hey, Kevin, how you doing, man? Kevin has asked, last 2 recruiter screen phone calls, I have decided not to follow up after. I called them back in the last week. Do I bother trying to get them back or just keep going, ruling out firms completely for wasting my time? So when it comes to putting specific recruiters on a blacklist, I honestly, generally speaking, if a recruiter thinks that they can get you hired and thus collect a commission fee, they will be up on you like white on rice to get your attention and get you out on interviews. And if they don't have anything, or if their client said no, they will ghost you. Do you take this personally? At the end of the day, it's just business. And I think that you'd be better off as keeping that door open, because like I said, if they believe that you have a good shot at getting a job, they will push for you to get that interview with that person. So unless they like really do you dirty, don't blacklist them, as you can always find other recruiters and other firms to talk to. But at the end of the day, establishing relationships with recruiters, it's a numbers game. So you definitely got to, it's a numbers game. So you definitely got to try to increase the numbers where you can, and try to, again, put yourself in the best position for success. Tori answered that question already. I had a role that had the third person postpone the position due to pricing reassessment recently after a 3rd round of interview. Does these happen often? They do, even prior to COVID. There could be a lot of reasons as to why you might not get a job that has nothing to do with you. I like to call them political reasons. It could be you were a bit more expensive than the person next to you that might have been a bit more junior. It could be that, somebody got a referral that they decided to put on priority. It could be that they lost a client that kind of just ate up their budget for the rest of the year. A number of different reasons. And especially in this COVID-19 situation, I would encourage you to prepare yourself for it to happen more often. But these companies try to avoid it because they realize with the advent of like Glassdoor and LinkedIn reviews, it's not the best way to establish a reputation for a smooth hiring practice.
Hello?
Hello. Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I have one question.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. So sometimes I come across the question during interviews about management and management styles. Mm-hmm. So if they ask kind of like an open-ended question, what's your favorite or preference when it comes to management styles? Do you use that question, or do you have like a best line of answer for that kind of question? Especially for me, I know I have more of like, I don't have like a hard preference for management styles, but I don't want to be micromanaged. So I don't know how to.
That was the thing. That's the thing I was listening out for. The micromanage. That's what that question is asking you. Do you like to be micromanaged? And the way you should answer it is to be honest. Like if you're somebody that is to be honest, but to package it correctly. Like if you're somebody that needs to be micromanaged, and you don't mind it, you can say something like, I like a management or style that's a bit more hands-on and somebody that's always around to give feedback, because micromanage is still a kind of an ugly word. Nobody wants to admit they're a micromanage, even though they're textbook a micromanager. I'll never forget one of my bosses. She explicitly told me that she's not a micromanager. And then my third day on the job, she was like, you know what, you're pretty new, just sit beside me. And she was trying to tell me how to do my job, which was like the worst experience. So sometimes it's really like, sometimes you just have to be upfront, especially even your own interests. Like, I don't like being micromanaged. You can say very positive, like, I work well with a lot of autonomy. My management, the managers I've been most successful with in the past are ones that trust my judgment and are ones that know, I'm responsible enough to know that if I'm having trouble, I'll ask for help. And B, that if they give me, all they need to do is to give me a deadline and an assignment, and it'll be done. And that's all they need to worry about. So that's how I position it. It's also a good way to see how they react, because if you are somebody that completely hates micromanaging, it's very easy to see when somebody is a micromanager when you answer the question a specific way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No worries. How definite is a verbal agreement? Can this be broken before the written offer is sent? Yes. A verbal agreement is just that. A verbal agreement is every single offer, honestly, is a conditional offer up until you step foot into the place. I believe for Canadian law, for you to get any sort of severance if you get fired, like prior to or like the first day of the job, you actually have to physically step foot in the office or physically or actually like log on during your first day to establish presence. But anything beforehand can be broken with no repercussions. A verbal agreement, same in a court of law. If it's not written down, it's not real. Usually a written offer has a bunch of conditional clauses that are conditional on reference and employment checks and criminal background checks. So again, until you're actually 1 foot in and have something written, it can be broken. A lot of work is becoming highly interdependent or independent, collaborative. How should we approach questions surrounding influencing others to fulfill a task? For example, how do you influence others in a way that empowers them to be engaged and motivated to work? I would have answered that question by saying that I would try to get to know the people that I work with the most as well as I can on a human and personal level, so that I have an easier time identifying what their emotional triggers are in terms of what emotionally digs them into their role or keeps them hooked. Is it, personal glory? Is it salary? Is it mission? And try to speak and emphasize those terms as a way to convince them to go along my thought pattern or what I'm thinking. You should also emphasize that you should also say to them that I'm also somebody that doesn't think I have all the perfect answers, and that I'm open to collaboration and hearing what other people have to say and working on a compromise. Shanice, would you say put an emphasis more on the soft skills or technical skills when interviewing for a career change? I studied marketing and now I'm going into project management. So for this, you would want to emphasize the soft skills as the overlapping skills that would make you an easier transition into that role. However, you would want to reference the technical skills in terms of the actual function of project management. So I'll give you an example. If, for instance, you've actually done the actual functional stuff of project management, handling budgets, handling timelines, getting resources in order, it just wasn't in that particular domain, you definitely want to mention that, but you want to also let them know that the soft skills are going to enable you to hit the ground running, and you'll have minimal onboarding outside of like domain knowledge.
Okay, so soft skills would be just to hit the ground and then just use examples of what's needed technically.
Exactly.
Okay.
How to answer questions regarding salary when you're starting out without selling yourself short. B, my suggestion would be to look up salaries in the market. I mentioned my salary guide, which is on my website, JupiterHR.ca. It'll give you a comprehensive look on, well, it's specific for technology professionals, but it'll give you a comprehensive look at what's available on the markets. There are other salary guides all around, and then you can also use sites like Glassdoor and Nuvo and LinkedIn Salary to get an idea of what other people are being paid, and then make a list of non-negotiables. Like, the salary amount is a non-negotiable for me. If anything comes below this, I'm not interested. I need to have these perks. I need to have this and that, and be firm on it. You'll get a lot farther saying no than you will yes. For Canadian job seekers, is there an advantage of being sourced by American recruitment firms? The only advantage would be financial incentive, because they tend to be recruiting based on companies that are in America. And as a result, sometimes your salary might actually be in USD. So if you were saying like, oh, I want 90K, they might hit you back with 90K USD when you were trying to go for 90K Canadian. And with the way that the market is right now, that would be a considerable difference. Likewise, you're also susceptible to when the markets fluctuate. Like back in 2008, the Canadian dollar was on par with the American dollar, and on some weeks it was stronger. So that's also something you should be aware of.
I have a question.
Yes, Suzette.
Okay, so there are times at the end of the interview, they may ask you if you have questions for them. Mm-hmm. What are some good questions that you can ask them, so that you may have things in your mind that you really want to ask them, but you're not sure how to bring it across? So what are some good questions, say for example, they're in the news media on something negative, do you really bring that up? I'm sure you would really want to do that to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable, but give us some good questions that we can ask them, to look a little more important and interesting to the interviewer.
Oh, if something negative happened in the news, I definitely would bring it up. But I wouldn't bring it up in the sense of like asking, like what happened. I'd ask them like, how has morale been around the office since this story broke? What are some ways that you're currently dealing with it? What kind of systems have you put in place to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again? Or even, the news is painting the story from this point of view. What's your perspective on it? Would be a good question to ask. Another question, and I think this is really relevant in today's world with COVID-19, ask them how they're set up for crisis management. Like, what does your runway look like? How much cash do you have in the bank? If you don't sign a new client for the rest of the year, are you going to have to close up shop? Or would we all have jobs? I think the financials is a question a lot of people feel uncomfortable asking, because we look at it the same way as like asking somebody for their salary, but that's not the case. The people that you commit to in order to work for also have a responsibility for transparency, so you know what you're getting yourself into. So I would ask questions like the Stevie Wonder question is a good fun question. I would definitely ask about runway, crisis management. I'd also ask them, what's different about the company today from when you first started? What would you have changed? What would you have kept the same? What do you miss about the old days? What are you looking forward to about some future initiatives that you're doing? In 5 years, what does the company's position hope to be in the market relative to competitors? These are all good questions that you could ask. And the more specific they are to the company, the more sincere they seem and less generic.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. I had, so when recruiters ask for salary, are they in USD? You always want to confirm what the currency is prior to giving a number. So, if you notice that they're calling from the States, ask them, well, what's the salary expectations for this role, or what's the salary range? And then ask again, like, is this in USD? Don't bring up Canadian, because, it's always in their best interest, or it's always in their client's best interest to have you agree for less, because they get paid regardless. But you should, again, just be careful with, again, asking for USD first, because it's more, and then going from there. Okay, well, everyone, that is it for our session here. We actually went a bit over time, but thank you. So, one last question from Therese. Hey, how you doing, Therese? What's the appropriate way to ask why this post is vacant? You pretty much want to know if there are any red flags with working with the applicant, but of course we can't be blunt. Just straight up ask, like, so what was the reason why this position, or why this seat is now open? What's the reason why you guys are hiring for this position? Did somebody leave? Is the company's role expanding? Like, what's the reason? And they'll be pretty upfront with you. But yeah, thank you everybody for participating. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to be uploading a recording of this video if you'd like to reference back to it. But yeah, thank you again. And everyone, please stay safe, wash your hands, and eat some good food. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.